Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Mike Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Amazing how a couple games changed the complexion of everything. Anthony, double overtime loss. Wild had plenty of opportunities to end that thing before Wyatt Johnston got his nifty stick on that puck, and we'll talk about that in a second. But, you know, when you have 5 power plays, 2 to take a 4-2 lead, 3 to break a tie, 2 in overtime, and you don't score, you just knew what was going to happen on that second penalty in a row, that one by Danila Yurov, dead tired, throws it into the stands, and you know it you know they get the timeout essentially to clean the ice as well. So it just felt like that entire time they were waiting for that PK. It was just a matter of time before the Wild lost that game, and they absolutely did on a great play by Heiskanen and a great play by Wyatt Johnston.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. First of all, the momentum swing of the series, I think, is significant, but it's also the challenge in a playoff series. And I think we talked about this on our first show, but the old saying is in the playoffs, sometimes when you win a game, you feel like we can't be beat. We're going to win the cup. And then all of a sudden you lose a game and you feel like it's the end of the world. The season's over. And the reality is nobody's going to go 16-0 to win a cup. And if you look at the cup winners over the years, almost always they're behind at some point in some series along the way. And the challenge for teams is to remember that just like in the regular season, it's one game. So the Wild lost this game. And I think what will define this team is, can they now come back in game 4 and let this be no more than just one game and not have it be something that deflates them and carries over into the next game. It's what Dallas did between games 1 and 2. Blown out in game 1, dominated in every phase, came back in game 2 and all day long had the approach that was one game. We're down 1. Now we got to win game 2. And now to the specifics of the game. Yeah, Dallas
just on that topic, though, the difference between the two organizations is one always does that and the other never does that.
Well,
I mean, that's just a fact. The Wild have lost 8 first-round series.
They have.
Dallas always loses game 1 and figures out a way to go to the conference final.
And that's what I'm saying is that's the challenge now for this Wild team to, if they want to be different, which they are. This is the most talented Wild team that they've had. I will add that over the course of the first-round losses, we've talked about this before, maybe 2 where they were a favorite for sure, and another where it was a pretty even series going in, where Wild had home ice, but that St. Louis club that they lost to in 22, those teams were really evenly matched. And this is another one. I mean, they're the road team. They're technically the underdog. And some of those series, they were dramatically overmatched. I mean, I think about Winnipeg in 18, even Dallas in 16 when the Wild were beat up. This one's different. The Wild match up with this Dallas team. These teams are very evenly matched, and now that is exactly what the challenge is. Can Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, Quinn Hughes, Brock Faber, Jules Eriksson, the leadership group of this Wild team, can they show up in game 4 and make sure that game 3 is in the rearview mirror, throw it out on the table and find a way to win that game and even up this series? And if they can do that, this team can be different. If they can't, then they aren't different. And Dallas, that's exactly the point, is that they've been down in these series. It was, I think I shared on the show after game 2 that when Wes Walls and I were talking before the series, and I said, there's just nothing that's going to happen in this series that this Dallas club hasn't faced before. And they haven't. They were blown out in game 1 last year by Colorado. They were blown out in game 1 by Minnesota this year. And now they have a series lead. Their big guys stepped up last night. And yes, Minnesota had all these power play chances. Now, there's some extenuating circumstance, or without Matt Zuccarello, the power play is not the same without him. They had a couple of power plays early in the game without Matt Boldy as well. So you've got a couple of guys on that top group that aren't the same. Dallas is playing the whole series without Hintz. So those are the challenges. And Dallas's power play has just frankly been better in this series. It's what I thought the single biggest key to this whole series was could the Wild stay disciplined as they had been all year? They haven't been able to. They've been giving Dallas far too many power play chances. And then could they at least be even in the special teams? And so far they've not. Dallas has been better.
To your point on the specifics of the series, I mean, you know, on those power plays, it concerns me that we talk about the depth of this team over and over and over again, and they're Matt Zuccarello injury away from everything imploding. I mean, that just first of all, the fact that he might retire after the season doesn't give you hope. Kirill Kaprizov can't be always a Matt Zuccarello injury away from being absolutely negated. And for a team that is as we all thought, a cup contender and still think is a cup contender, the reality is that Vladimir Tarasenko didn't work with them. Then you have to throw Bobby Brink on the top line. The power play has been totally inefficient without Zuccarello. It's just, to me, it's not acceptable. Like, Kirill Kaprizov needs to show up in these games. And as he's done a lot this year, Anthony, and I know we talk about his points and how good of a year he had and all that stuff. He was a power play merchant for most of the year. At even strength, he was not. And I just look at a guy that at some point needs to stop being outplayed by the other team's superstars, and it happens way too often.
Well, yeah, I agree that I don't think Kaprizov has been good enough in this series to carry that line. And in game 1, when Zuccarello was playing, those guys were terrific. Games 2 and 3 with Zuccarello out, that line hasn't done much. And part of it is, I think the Duchesne Robertson line has played really well against him. And part of it is no Matt Zuccarello, and Bobby Brink I thought was pretty good last night, but he's not Matt Zuccarello. I think it's a little exaggerated to say that Kaprizov is a power play merchant. I mean, he did score almost 30 even strength goals this year, and he scored 45 overall for the year. And I mean, look at Wyatt Johnson, who's had a great year for Dallas. I mean, he scored 18 at even strength all year. So it's not Kaprizov. What do you have? 17. He had 19 on the power play, so he had 26 even strength goals. I mean, that's a pretty good season.
His expected goals at even strength, though, have not been nearly like the other superstars in the league.
I don't think he's been good enough in this series, without a doubt. But now, again, this game, it's such a fine line. He hit a post with a chance to win the game. What if if you hit a post, you're less than an inch away from scoring? He scores. Nobody's talking about this. The Wild are up 2-1, and everybody's talking about.
But he didn't score.
He
so
didn't
we're talking
score.
About it.
Nope, I know that's absolutely true. But I'm just
two
saying
shots for the second game in a row.
But it's such a fine line between whether. I mean, look at Jason Robertson had missed opportunities early in the series. Now in the last 2 games, he's cashed in. Kirill cashed in game 1. He didn't in games 2 and 3. He has to cash in game 4, in my opinion. That this team can't ride only the Boldy Eriksson line at even strength. Dallas has got nothing from their depth guys either. That's been the interesting part of this series is that you made a comment earlier about the Wild becoming deeper. Well, they became deeper with 3rd and 4th line role player type guys.
Yeah.
And those guys were good last night. McCarron, I thought, was really good for them.
Great.
Nick Foligno drew a penalty at a key time. But when you look at the scoring, last night when McCarron scored with an assist from Nick Foligno, it was the first point the Wild had from their bottom 6 in the series, and Dallas doesn't have one yet. Not a single point outside. I think they only have 5 players who have a point in the series. So it's amazing how much the top guys have been the difference in this series, but a big part of that has been because so much of the offense has been special teams.
So how did they solve this issue here? If Matt Zuccarello can't play game 4, Anthony, we've seen Tarasenko not work there. We've seen Brink not work there. Do you play a Hunter Haight and move a Ryan Hartman to right wing? Do you just load up right away with Boldy on that line? They've got to figure out a way to get Kaprizov going here, and clearly people are having trouble playing with him.
Yeah,
he's having trouble playing with people.
Yeah, I think it might be more of that. I think what we found from Kaprizov is he needs somebody that drives the pace on his line. And Zuccarello doesn't do it necessarily with his feet, but he does it with his mind and his puck moving. And, I don't know that I'd go away from Brink, at least yet. I don't know that it's time to throw a Hunter Haight in. I think that might... I could see that showing a little, almost like a panic move.
I totally disagree. But first of all, I just think he's so respected in that room. And, I just think that we're, and look, I'm not saying Hunter hates Porter Matone, but I do think that teams need to be. We're in an age now where these guys are so different than kids yesteryear, and they play huge, high stakes tournaments, and I just think teams need to be. They need to stop being afraid to play the kids.
Yeah.
And he would add a level of speed and skill and competitiveness to this group that right now I don't see them having in their bottom six. And I'm not saying that you got to play him on a Kaprizov line, but I think,
Well, I mean, but that's the question we're asking is what do you do to get Kaprizov going? And I don't think you can go into a game loading up and try to win with one line, not against this Dallas club. I really don't. I think you've got to have two lines. I wouldn't want to mess with the Boldy, Eriksson, Ek Johansson line. I think that line has been good. So if you're talking about who do you play with Kaprizov to get him going, well, the answer is not Tarasenko. The answer is not Danila Yurov. I don't think the answer is found in the bottom six on this roster. So you're down to Bobby Brink or else, to your point, trying to start or throw somebody else in the lineup that hasn't been there yet. And I just don't think, I'm not sure that right now I'd look at Hunter Haight and say he has, even in the, and I like Haight, I think he's got a chance to be a good player. I think he's shown some flashes, but it isn't like he hit the ice like you throw out Porter Martone, and I know you're not saying he's that type of player, but the difference is they threw that guy in and he immediately was on the score sheet. That's not what's happened to Hunter Haight when he's played. We see
but at the end of the year, he was great the last couple games that he played, and he ended the year on tear in AHL.
But he didn't look at what he did over the course of the NHL. He had one goal in, 10 games, 9 games, 10 games. I mean, that isn't a guy who came in. If he had played in those 8-9 games, and I agree with you, he showed some flashes, but he also had some games where he absolutely was invisible. And he isn't a guy that I think demanded a chance. That's all. I think there's just a difference there. So to me, I think I would go Brink one more game with those guys. And I mean, this was a game that the Wild lost the game. And they're now in a tough spot in the series where I mean, it's not a must win, but it's nearly a must win in game 4. But they lost the game because they took too many penalties and Dallas scored 3 times on a power play. You still went to double overtime. So I don't think you look back at it and say, it isn't like you lost a game 7-1 where you generated nothing all night. This is a game that could have been won, maybe should have been won. And I'm not sure that the answer is a major lineup shuffle for the Wild. I just think it's a team that they have to find a way to cash in when they get the opportunities. They had the power plays that you mentioned earlier in the show. They had the puck the whole first overtime, outshot them 8-2. Dallas never really had a chance. They just didn't cash in.
It really is amazing. You give up 2 shots in a 33-minute stretch before that first of the back-to-back Dallas power play chances in overtime, and you lose the game. I don't know. It's so Minnesota Wild. It's not even funny.
But yet you also look in there, and I'll go back to like a what if type question. I mean, you think about there were so many big plays for the Wild in this game that if they had won, that's what you'd be talking about instead. Killing off the 5-on-3 and then McCarron scoring right out of the penalty box. Withstanding the cheap shot by Jamie Benn on Matt Boldy and not letting it derail your game. Boldy coming back and absolutely, like he was like a superhero shot out of a cannon in the second period. He was just absolutely dominant. The Wild got a lot of bad breaks in this game and yet still were an eyelash away from winning the game. And if you win that game, those are the kind of things you're talking about. And that's what I'm saying is the challenge in a playoff series is not to forget about those things. Those things were all critical parts of this game. And you have to be able to take those and then look logically ahead at game 4 and say,
I get it, but from a fan standpoint, let's just talk a fan standpoint.
They're not going to do that. It's different. I know.
Yeah, but
I mean, I'm aware of what the fans are thinking.
The reality that we live in is that
that's the reality. That's the reality for the fan, not for the guys inside the room. I'm trying to talk about the guys inside the locker room.
At some point, this organization has to show that it is different. And
I agree.
We're not it's not like what if this, what if that. They didn't do it. They had 2 chances to win the game, and the collection of their players again failed. Absolutely. to
Right.
turn that game.
But
They had a chance to turn a 3-2 lead into a 4-2 lead twice. Matt Boldy had a chance to turn into a 4-2 lead on shorthanded. They didn't do it, and they wind up falling on their face again. And that's just a reality. And if they go on to lose this series, that is going to be what we talk about. That they gave up the farm for Quinn Hughes and nothing changed.
Right. And I'm not. I don't think you're listening to what I'm not saying.
I'm listening. I'm listening to you again saying, well, that if they had scored those goals, we would be talking about it. They didn't, so we're talking about that.
Right. But what I'm saying is that I'm not saying that it doesn't matter that they lost the game. I'm saying the challenge for a team in a playoff series is not to overreact and panic after you lose a game. The challenge is to change it in the next game. Right now, we don't know the answer to that question. Is this team capable of being different? I happen to think they are, and I think they're capable of winning game 4, but they have to show that. They have to prove that. And until they do, then we don't know the answer to that question. So I'm just trying to say that from inside the room, you have to be able to look at the game as a whole. It's what Dallas did after game 1. They came out and said, look, a whole bunch of things went wrong in that game. We have to make some adjustments. We have to change, but there was zero panic. There wasn't an iota of panic inside that room. It was, to a man, we weren't good enough. They were matter of fact. They came out and changed it in game 2 and played differently. Can Minnesota do that in game 4? I don't know. But I'm just saying, to say that, well, the only solution is if we throw this guy in the lineup or make this dramatic change I don't know if that's the answer, because I think there were a lot of good things in the game last night that as a coach you have to be able to look at and say, well, what was the breakdown? Breakdown was you gave them 8 power play opportunities. That can't happen. The 5-on-5 game, Minnesota was certainly as good or better than Dallas most of the night. But you can't give a team with that kind of firepower 8 chances on the power play. And if that doesn't change, I don't see how this series changes. If it does, if Minnesota goes back to what they were all year, which was one of the most disciplined teams in the league, they were 4th in the league in the fewest power play opportunities against. They're last among the 16 playoff teams so far. You have to be able to get back to that. And that's what I think the challenge is. And I asked Ryan Carter this last night. These penalties last night were not because of emotional, physical altercations after whistles. They were all stick penalties, or most of them, and both sides. And I just asked him, I said, is it because the pace of the game is just faster, the intensity of the moment, how much is on the line on each play? I'm not sure what it is, but for whatever reason, neither one of these teams can stay out of the penalty box right now. And Dallas has cashed in better than Minnesota. So I think the Wild have to, if Dallas gets 4 or 5 power play chances again in game 4, I think we're probably going to be talking about a team that's down 3-1 going back to Dallas.
Right. You've heard me talk about the Onyx Hunt app on here for years. Well, make sure you download the Onyx Fish app as well, because before you even pull the boat out of the garage, you can sort lakes by species, trophy potential, and keeper potential, so you're not just guessing and you're going out with a plan. You could also use the Onyx Fish app to filter walleye, bass, panfish, whatever you're chasing, and see species abundance and size data so you actually know what's in the lake before you launch. Everything you need to get there and get on fish is all in one app. Boat ramps, lake access points, public versus private land, points of interest like bait shops and camping. It's all built into the app. No more scrambling around 3 different apps or outdated reports. Onyx Fish gives you the proven fishing area data and local insights that used to take years to learn. So you could do a decade of knowledge all in about 10 minutes. So download Onyx Fish on the App Store or visit onyxmaps.com/fish. Spring fishing is here. Go find a lake you've been driving past for years and finally find out if it's worth the launch. Do I have a can't miss out of this world event that'll make your water worry-free and your home ridiculously cozy and comfy? It's the Aquarius Home Services and Connecticut Customer Appreciation 3-day open house. Aquarius's biggest sale of the year, happening Friday, May 1st through Sunday, May 3rd. Enjoy a weekend packed with fun, a delicious pig roast, lots of gifts and prizes, and yes, even a petting zoo for the kiddos on Saturday and Sunday. The open house is jam-packed with all kinds of savings. Up to 30% off Connecticut, the world's most efficient water treatment system. I have it, you'll love it. 20% off salt and water filters. Up to 30% off heating and cooling systems, plus huge savings on generators, water heaters, and more. Plus, bring a water sample from your home or cabin. They'll test it for free while you eat, explore, and score some deals. It's all happening in Little Canada at 694 and 35E, right across from Dock 86. Aquarius Home Services. Go to aquariushomeservices.com right now for all the details and see you there. Aquarius Home Services, earning the right to be recommended.
Are you looking to move a little easier and feel better day to day? StretchLab can help. StretchLab is the leader in one-on-one assisted stretching with locations across the Twin Cities. Every session is customized, whether you're chasing a loose puck, grinding through men's league, or just trying to keep up with the game. It's not just recovery, it's mobility, prevention, and performance. Tight hips, sore back, it's all about staying in the game, whatever your game looks like. Don't sit this shift out. Book your first stretch today and feel the difference.
A great haircut is always a mood booster, but it's even better when it's convenient too. That's why you'll love online check-in at Great Clips. You just check in from your phone and get a ready next text when you're up next. Plus, with the convenient hours at Great Clips salons, you can get a haircut even when you're really busy. So if your hair and your mood could use a boost, download the app today. Great Clips. It's going to be great. The special teams rears its ugly head again. I didn't love, and it was unsolicited because I asked the question, Marcus Foligno in game 2 playing with fire by saying that the Dallas Stars can't hang with the Wild at 5-on-5. That's hogwash. But I'll tell you one thing: the Minnesota Wild proved that they can't hang with, and that's them at special teams. It's happening again. They're proving again that when the emotions get big, that they can't stay out of the box, regardless of the type of penalties that were happening last night. To your point, stick penalties, and their power play fails dramatically, and their penalty kill fails dramatically. I mean, I know that this is a different year, and you're pointing out like the challenge of this is to look at the positives, but when you've seen this movie over and over again by the same collection of players, Anthony,
right.
It's very concerning.
It is concerning, but I'm not saying that. I think it's yet to be determined if this is different. That's all I'm saying. This collection of players has to show that they're different. I mean, they're different in that they have Quinn Hughes. They've never had him here before. That makes this team different, without a doubt. They're just different. But they have to prove that they're different in this spot. And can they? And I also want to make it clear, I'm not just saying look at only the positives from game 3. I'm saying you have to be able to look at it objectively. There were positives, but there were also things that are concerning. One of them, the biggest one, is the discipline. That has to change. And then I think you have to find a way to clean some things up on the penalty kill, because it's not a coincidence that Dallas continues to score on the power play. Now, they're a terrific power play. They were second best in the NHL, set a franchise record. They were the number 1 combined special teams team in the NHL. So this isn't like you're getting lit up by the special teams of the Seattle Kraken. I mean, you're getting lit up by the best special teams in the NHL, but you knew that coming into the series. So you knew you had to keep this game at 5-on-5, at 4-on-4, and play it that way. And the Wild haven't been able to do that so far. So I think you have to be able to look back at these things, not just the positives and the negatives, but then just not overreact to what the end result was. Instead, look at the specifics of what wasn't good enough along the way, because there were some things that were really terrific. And the Boldy's play was outstanding. Joel Eriksson Ek was an absolute beast last night. 27 faceoff wins, took 40 draws, and was an absolute animal against Dallas's best players. I mean, you look at the Johnson-Rantanen line, they generated almost nothing at even strength, and a lot of that was playing against Eriksson Ek's line. So there's some things there where you can say, all right, well, that gives me reason to believe that Game 4 can be different, but the things you have to clean up are the things that are most important. I think
What do you make of Marcus right now? He has a turnover on the second goal by just, again, not putting the puck on that. He made a really horrific decision by trying to pass it toward the blue line to McCarron. He doesn't get the clear before
You're talking about Marcus Foligno.
Yeah, Marcus. Did I say Johansson or
no? You just said Marcus, and I was making sure which one you were talking about.
The turnover there. He didn't get the clear before the Urov penalty. Obviously the puck on the Wyatt Johnston goal first deflects off him. It just seems like, man, we're not seeing the best of him.
No, I think he's probably frustrated. I think we saw some of that in with the penalty against Harley in game 2. Just some of that, the emotional stuff, you know? I mean, I know that I listened to Matt Duchene in the postgame last night after his version. I didn't hear what Marcus had to say about that play where Duchene fell on top of him and, you know, but you could tell he was running hot after that. And, you know, he's been such a terrific leader for this Wild club throughout his career. And, you know, right now it seems like the intensity of these games against Dallas has made it tough for him to play with the same kind of discipline he plays with most of the season. But that's a part of all of this. The Wild, they have to find that, and he has to find that the rest of the way in this series.
You worried how the lasting effects of this? I mean, you know, I don't think he was very good last night. Even before, he had another play that was almost very similar that he almost messed up on a play where they were hemmed in for a while. I mean, you know, there's another one. I mean, I know you don't want to take him out and create that narrative, but you know, there's one where you could change him with Hunter Haight.
Well, that to me would make a little bit. There's a little more possibility of that. But the only thing about Urov is that his game is so good, so responsible in his own zone. And I know he took the penalty last night with throwing the puck into the crowd. And, you know, but those are the kind of things that happen when you start to get fatigued toward the end of a game, end of a shift. And
It was a tired mistake.
It was a tired mistake. It was. And, you know, Boldy's was just a kind of an unfortunate when he fired at the length of the ice
Right
and
when he
sailed into
got
the crowd.
you know, I covered Brian Ralston do the same thing in Dallas one year. Right when he got it, it was like I almost saw it before it happened. I'm like, oh boy, because he just airmailed it. It was
Yeah.
yeah.
But the Urov thing is a little more interesting. I was worried about his ability to compete on the faceoff dot. And boy, you know, I didn't look at what the final numbers were last night, but at one point in the second overtime, Eriksson Ek was like 27-12, and the rest of the team was like 14-34 or something like that. And Urov's a part of that. So, you know, again, I don't know that I'd make that change right now. You got a guy who has proven himself over the course of the year to be a guy on whom you can depend in your own zone. I don't know if throwing Hunter Haight into a spot like that is the right answer at this level, at this point in his career.
Ryan Hartman lost 16 of 22 faceoffs last night. Urov lost 7 of 8.
Yeah, and so let's just stop on the Hartman thing for a minute because, you know, the easy thing to point to on that line is say Kirill Kaprizov's your superstar. He's not making anything happen. Well, when the center on your line is winning 25% of his draws, so you're starting without the puck each and every shift against a pretty good possession club, that's not the easiest thing to pile up points when you're in that spot. Now, you can't. I'm not just saying, oh, you lose a faceoff, that means you don't score on that shift, but it does make it more difficult, without a doubt, and that's a factor. And then, of course, not playing with your regular wing. I think you have to remember those kind of things when you look at a player and say he's not doing anything right now.
Fair enough, absolutely. And good math, knowing it was 24%, not 25.
That's close.
Just last week, before we wrap up the show, let's talk a little bit about Dallas. Miro Heiskanen, you know, he comes in. Like we talked about before the series, how if he doesn't play, it changes everything for Dallas. And he's had a miraculous recovery, you know, from the injury that he sustained against the Wild in the last regular season game. Last night, 43 minutes, obviously has the play for the winning goal. I believe he blocked 5 shots in the game. You know, had a bunch of shot attempts in the game. And he defends so well.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And there were so many times last night where after an icing, Minnesota's got an offensive zone draw, a chance to exploit a tired group for Dallas, and they'd win a draw, and immediately the defensemen go to the bench, and Heiskanen and Lindell jump back over the wall, and here you go again with those guys against either the Kaprizov line or the Boldy line. I mean, I've been a Miro Heiskanen fan for a long time, and he was taking one pick after Cale Makar in that draft, and I know or one pick before Cale Makar. I mean, and I've heard sometimes like, oh, just think if Dallas had taken Cale Makar. I'm not sure this team's better with Cale Makar, and that sounds crazy to say, but what Heiskanen does for them is so different from any of these other elite defensemen. It's different than what Quinn Hughes brings to Minnesota. It's different than what Cale Makar brings to Colorado. You mentioned his minutes. Look at how many of them were on special teams last night. He quarterbacks their first power play, and he's the first guy out there on every penalty kill. It's amazing what he does for that club, and the little subtle stick on the puck plays, chips along the wall, things to disrupt opportunities for Minnesota. I think you could argue right now that he's been the best player in this series, and he won't get that kind of attention because people will remember the guys with the goals. They'll remember maybe a goalie with big saves. But Miro Heiskanen, to me, has been the reason why Dallas has won the last 2 games.
21 minutes of special teams time
that's what
last night for Miro Heiskanen.
That's half the time he was on the ice. And the other thing, the other number that's interesting to note is, so again, this goes back to the way you have to look back at the game. Dallas had 36 shots on goal last night. 18 of them came on the power play. They had 18 shots on goal when not on the power play in 4.5 periods. So I don't think you look at that and say that you're in trouble in any way. They scored 3 power play goals. They scored 4 total. I think the things that Minnesota can take from that game is that at 5-on-5, they did defend Dallas pretty well. They matched up pretty well with each and every line they had. It was just that they didn't score on the power play. Dallas did, and they took too many penalties.
What's that sound like? 2023 all over again.
It does sound like 2023, yep. And that's but the difference, I think, in 2023 is that Minnesota wasn't necessarily the better team 5-on-5. They were competitive 5-on-5. Here, I think they have been the better team at even strength throughout this series. But I never would have thought coming into this series that the Wild would be sitting here in this spot, having been shorthanded this many times through the first 3 games. I really thought this team understood what had happened to them in 23. They understood the way it affected them even last year against Vegas. And they had been so disciplined all year that I expected we would see something different. And so far we haven't. I still believe there's going to be a long series, but that has to change or it's not going to be.
Game 4 is at 4:30 p.m. on Saturday. The best news of last night was a 7 p.m. Tuesday night start. I
do like that. I'm excited about that. I have some better news for you because I know that you just seem to take pride in anything that challenges others. So you will now be very relieved to know that Ryan Carter and I are going to fly commercially to Dallas and back for Game 5.
Wow, what time?
I don't remember what time I booked my flight.
Okay.
I think maybe.
I hope you're on mine.
I'm not flying Delta. I know that. Probably not. I think I'm sometime in the morning on Monday.
Yep. By the way, did you finish all those berries last night? Because nobody else was allowed to have berries in the press room.
They had an entire tray of berries.
And you took them all.
No, I took a decent chunk of the raspberries and a few strawberries. Only about 4 blackberries. They weren't very good last night.
I thought I know you don't believe in jinxes, but you might believe in this one. When I came up to you and I said to you, I brought 3 plums, 1 for each overtime, and that is, I ate those plums last night.
Yeah, it was.
Don't you think that the Wild press box needs to stop getting rid of the coffee and all the stuff, like, in the third period, just assuming the game's going to be over?
Well, I never drink coffee during the game, so I didn't really pay attention to that. I switched to tea.
But nothing was there.
Yeah, I think all of a sudden there's a few more media members here than are around during the season, so it disappears a little more quickly. But
yep, exactly.
I'll work on those guys for it. Maybe we'll get you a little Keurig pot to just sit next to you so you can make sure you're properly caffeinated.
Yep. Just so everybody knows, John Hines is available this afternoon, and then they'll practice tomorrow. So you will be seeing Hines quotes today, but so we'll get injury updates. We'll try to get to the bottom of how they can get Kaprizov up and running here. Game 4, Saturday, 4:30 p.m. Thanks for this latest edition of Worst Seats in the House. Thanks to our incredible sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems. Our newest 2 sponsors, Great Clips and Stretch Lab, and of course, OnX Maps. Thanks, everybody.
So much coming out, there's nothing going in. but the world won't forgive